we'll give you our questions. Go ahead, Allie Mills. Allie Mills.
Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito, and members of the Committee of Environmental and Public Works, thank you for inviting me to testify on this vitally important topic. My name is Allie Mills. I am the president of Plum Contracting in Pennsylvania and an active member of Associated General Contractors of America, AGC. Plum Contracting is a family-operated business for 42 years located just east of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In that time, we have become a high-valued highway and bridge contractor in Pennsylvania while also having a successful subcontracting division installing highway edge drains along the East Coast. I want to start by thanking the committee for their work and leadership in the development of the IIJA. The IIJA represents the most significant infusion of investment in our infrastructure since the enactment of the interstate highway system in the mid-1950s. I also want to thank the committee for continuing to prioritize formula dollars to states through the core highway formula programs and ask that you continue to do so in the future rather than creating new grant programs, especially discretionary ones. A recent survey of AGC members found that 93% of the construction companies are experiencing long lead times and/or allocations for construction materials. Infrastructure projects costs continue to climb and rising construction material prices and shortages. Material price increases have doubled or even tripled in some cases. Supply chain disruptions from the pandemic have inflated the cost of construction materials and made project delivery schedules and product availability more uncertain. Today, my company is experiencing an unprecedented burden with bidding and procurement of new projects. We are bidding jobs, plugging numbers because suppliers will not quote projects due to fluctuations in material pricing or lack of material supply. We are seeing suppliers quote projects but not sign purchase orders, so they are not held responsible for honoring their price if material prices do increase. Once we begin construction, the new normal is delays on a project because of supply issues. From a project scheduling perspective, it has turned into a nightmare. As you know, the IIJA included the Build America, Buy America Act, which expands domestic sourcing requirements to all construction materials on federally assisted projects. I want to be clear, AGC supports sensible efforts to encourage the growth of America's domestic manufacturing capacity to restore balance to the supply chain. However, these new requirements have created significant confusion among industry about the difference between a construction material and a manufactured product and what manufacturing processes must occur domestically for construction materials. To address this issue, U.S. DOT must identify a specific list of which construction materials will have to be Buy America compliant and which materials will be considered a manufactured product. To date, they have not done this. There is also heartburn within the construction industry about potential future project delays due to the need for a Buy America waiver and the low likelihood of being granted one based on history. While we still await clarification from OMB, the initial director of the Made in America office has since left just weeks before the implementation has begun. To put it nicely, implementation of a new Buy America requirements is off to a rocky start, and the construction industry is very concerned and confused. A great way to maximize the investment in IIJA would be to implement the environmental review and permitting reforms that were mandated in the bill. By implementing these provisions, we believe that the costs associated with delivering projects will be reduced without jeopardizing environmental protections. AGC also has concerns about recent changes to the National Environmental Policy Act in the Council on Environmental Quality's Phase 1 rulemaking. These changes add bureaucratic steps in an already burdensome and slow process, require more time-consuming analysis, increase litigation risk for project decisions, and encourage agencies to impose requirements that go beyond CEQ regulations and would slow agency decision-making and discourage the transformational investments needed across the country. Labor shortages also continue to be a top concern for the industry, with the most construction firms expecting labor conditions to remain tight. Despite firms increasing pay and benefits, the workforce shortage continues. The industry is facing the effects of decades of policies directing students to attend four-year institutions as the only career options. Again, I thank the committee for the opportunity to testify today. I appreciate its continued efforts to help improve the nation's infrastructure and enact policies that create good-paying jobs in America. I look forward to answering any questions.
Thanks very much. I'm going to, when we do Q&A, I'm going to come back to your last point about the kind of skills sets that we're graduating students from our colleges and university community colleges. It's a good point. We'll come back to that. Thank you.
So, Ms. Mills, you're you're right there on the ground trying to figure out how to write your bids to match these sorts of things. Are you seeing this? I know the Buy America, and we'll get into that later. But I mean, are you seeing the one federal decision in any form or fashion moving from your planning to your actual able to bid and get projects moving faster?
I think coming from a state like Pennsylvania, which is known for having a lot of structurally deficient bridges.
I get it. I'm from West Virginia. We've got them too.
I'm from Pittsburgh, so we just had the Fern Hollow Bridge collapse, and there was a rush to get that project back on the ground. So any further permitting and time delays is hard on us in Pennsylvania to correct our problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Ms. Mills, we have something we're faced with right now, and it's this level of inflation that creates other problems. Over the past of the last year, how has your company managed the workforce and supply chain challenges in the face of what I'd call the multi-decade high inflation environment that we're in?
Yes, as I spoke before, we are actually one of the biggest highway edge drain installers on the East Coast. So what we do is we put in plastic pipe, and we all know what happened with plastic pipe in the past year. I can tell you we install about 1.5 million feet a year across the East Coast, and our pipe pricing went up 80% since last year. So something that used to be below $1 is now close to $2. And a contractor of my size cannot absorb $1 million loss continually with all these issues.
As easily, perhaps, as some of the larger companies are able to do. And then would you also specifically talk about, as you know, Oklahoma is a rural state, and the unique problems that you're facing with right now in our states like Oklahoma?
Yep, and in Pennsylvania, where our company is located, we're also pretty rural. We're outside of Pittsburgh, but we're having trouble getting people to drive to job sites because of the cost of fuel. Some of our projects are an hour away, and our employees are picking more urban areas to go to work, or either other jobs outside of the construction industry because they can afford to drive that hour and pay for gas.
Ms. Mills, I want to ask, I mentioned in my opening statement the frustration that I have that, we talk about where we compromised and how we put into this bill things that we wanted, like one federal decision and other things, but we also left things out on the cutting room floor, so to speak, that we didn't put in here. And one of these is the greenhouse gas performance measure. There was an effort to incorporate that into the bill and a requirement for our states to set certain stages, but we did not include that in there. However, the Federal Highway Administration is coming back for a proposed rulemaking to establish a greenhouse gas emissions performance measure requiring states to set declining targets. I don't know, practically speaking, how that plays into your bidding and your perception of how this might impact further construction but also further implementation of this bill.
I think, again, my location in Pennsylvania, I'm not in an urban area. I'm in rural in a more rural part of the state, so it's going to be the distances that we travel and the kind of work that we do. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree.
Danny Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here. Important topic. I like to say my state is also rural. Senator Capito was talking about West Virginia. The great state of Alaska, we're a resource-rich but infrastructure-poor state. We are 120 times bigger than Connecticut, and we have fewer road miles. Right? Think about that. And we have resources, minerals, oil, gas, so many things that can power the whole country and our national security and our economy. But they're hard to get to. And unfortunately, there's a lot of radical groups from the lower 48 that try to prevent Alaskans from building anything. So what I want to do is talk about, continue this topic of permitting reform. You know, a lot of us worked hard to get some good permitting provisions in this infrastructure bill. I voted for the bill. It wasn't perfect, but in part because of the permitting provisions. We need more of them, but it was a good start. So here was my astonishment, and I think some of you might have shared it with me, that the Biden administration, which touted the bill as important for the economy and workers and infrastructure, then issued a regulation in April of this past year from their CEQ group in the White House, a rule to make permitting on infrastructure much harder. Okay, we all know that. So, Ms. Mills, I want you to talk about that and maybe others. I put together what's called a Congressional Review Act. That's Congress's ability to flex its muscle and say, you know what, we really don't like that executive order. We're going to rescind it. And I was proud to say that my CRA, as we call them, had a vote on the Senate floor, and it rescinded the Biden permitting CEQ rule, which was an anti-permitting rule, meant to stop production and building of energy projects, of roads. Unbelievable. So that passed. The reason it passed is because we had over 50 groups in America, all the unions that build things, AGC, farmers, ranchers, you name it, they came out, Chamber of Commerce, literally everybody except the radical enviros, they all came to support my CRA. So can you talk about this insane CEQ rule that undermines the whole bill? Do you support my CRA? I know you do, because you guys are one of the groups that support it. And what more can we do to make this administration wake up to the fact that you can't crush the ability to get projects done? I know you love the radical enviros, Mr. President, you know, Center for Biological Diversity, all these nut job groups, but nobody else does. They hurt workers, they hurt the economy, they hurt the ability to build infrastructure. Can you guys talk about this? It's so important, and it's remarkable to me that we'd pass a bill and then the White House would come out with rules to undermine the very ability to build infrastructure that they've touted.
Right. I remember when this bill was being passed, I was staying up late talking to our association director, text back and forth, like, yes, let's get this done, you know, and we were so excited about this historic bill. Again, I'm right outside of Pittsburgh. We had the Fern Hollow Bridge project. We have all this money. Let's get all this work out to the contractors and my employees.
In the unions, right?
In the unions.
Building trades, they're great Americans.
Everybody wants to be at work. Everyone wants to make roads and bridges better.
So what was your view of the CEQ rule?
It was burdensome.
Make it harder to build bridges
Yes.
and roads, right?
Yes.
Anyone else have a view on this?
Good work. I promised I was going to ask all of you to answer the same question. And I just want a fairly short answer, if you will, because I have a number of questions to ask. But Mr. Stanton, we're into our first vote on the floor, so I don't have forever. So just be brief, right to the point. Start with Mr. Stanberry here. Here's a question. Maybe pick one major point where you think you're all in agreement that's important for this committee that you want to say, if you don't remember anything else, remember this, and this is something we all agree on. Go ahead.
I think we all agree that this is a transformational bill. The private sector is ready to take it on. We all need help getting the rules right, to your point, the refinements, so that we have clear rules of the road that encourage business investment going forward. I think we can 100% all agree to those points.
Good. Thanks. Mr. Levy?
Yeah, in addition to agreeing with Mr. Stanberry, I think the one theme that I heard a couple times from everybody is that there are a lot of best practices already existing that we can leverage together, and that requires some stakeholder engagement. It also requires some working through implementation of the individual states that are putting out awards to say, hey, here's something we have seen in other grant programs or in other recycling programs or anything else that has come up today. And I think the power of leveraging best practices can help reduce the time to deploy and really make sure that we're implementing responsibly and effectively.
All right, thank you, Mr. Levy. Mr. Bauer?
A big part of this discussion, and I can appreciate you convening the hearing, is trying to talk about how the legislation that you all crafted and shepherded through is impacting lives. And I think we can't do that enough. I mean, and when we get to the point where the bipartisan infrastructure law has to be reauthorized, if members of Congress and the American public don't know exactly how they benefited and how greatly it changed the quality of life in the American economy, then our challenge of continuing the trajectory and maintaining the progress that you all made is going to be even greater. So we have to do more of that as the years go forward.
All right, thanks, Mr. Bauer. Ms. Mills?
Yes, I again thank you for this historic bill. We are really excited about it here in Pennsylvania in our company. I think I'm echoing what everybody else is saying. There's some challenges to it. There's a little bit of uncertainty, but we look forward to benefiting from it.
Okay, thanks. On the floor. This question is for the entire panel. And it's clear from your testimonies that private sector can partner productively with public agencies to achieve important national goals. What advice would you give to the U.S. Department of Transportation and to the Environmental Protection Agency to ensure that as they implement federal programs like the ones that we're just talking about here today, they help to leverage private sector expertise, help to elicit and leverage private sector expertise, private sector investments in innovation. And Mr. Johnson, you go first, just very briefly.
Sure. No, we, granted, every company here, I'm sure our trade associations, we are always eager to work with the agencies to find solutions and to move this stuff forward. One of the things that if the agencies could get out their grant application programs, so we can take advantage of the authorization under IIJA and IRA to come up with innovative ways to further decrease energy use and decrease air emissions. We'd be glad to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Mills, just very briefly.
Sure. I think I'll echo what Mr. Johnson said. We're eager to get to work. We want to build those bridges so they're not falling in the state of Pennsylvania. So we want to partner with any agencies for a great project.
All right, thank you, ma'am.